Hi everyone, so we are going to talk today about some extinction and biodiversity loss. So what we talked about before was what was biodiversity, what maybe made a certain area more biodiverse than another. So if we remember, biodiversity is just the abundance of different species in an area. So when we see this loss in biodiversity, we're going to see a loss in these species. So that's why extinction is really highly connected here. So when we take a look at what extinction is, it's the disappearance of species from Earth, whether that be a single species or multiple species. So generally, this is going to occur gradually, one species at a time, when we see those environmental conditions change. But when we see those conditions change very rapidly, we're going to see that more species are not going to be able to survive, and that's where we're going to get multiple species becoming extinct quickly. So remember, these environmental conditions are really important because if they change too quickly, while the animals cannot adapt to that, we're not going to see them have that range of tolerance. Where the more gradual, yes, maybe over time, the environmental conditions are changing, but maybe those species are able to adapt, which is why it's very slow with those different types of extinction events. There are 5 known mass extinction events, and each of them wiped out really large portions of the Earth species. If you do want to take another look at that, please take a look at this YouTube video. It really explains all those different extinction events very well. So let's talk about some natural biodiversity loss. So background extinctions, those are naturally occurring, one species at a time, so that really slow transition. Where mass extinctions are going to be events in which the rates exceed far over that normal background rate. So when we watch that video, we're going to see that a lot of these extinction events usually wiped out either half or more than that in a single time. So that's why those are very significantly different than those very gradual, slow, one species at a time. And again, those 5 major mass extinctions, the ones you're probably most familiar with, is the dinosaur extinction, which actually is the most current mass extinction event that's happened. But again, each time more than 1/5 of all families and 1/2 of all species have gone extinct. So that would be that nice, clear definition of what that mass extinction actually means here. So when that biodiversity is at risk, not fully extinct, we're going to see just a little bit difference here. So the current extinction rate is actually very high. It's greater, it's 100 to 1,000 times greater than the natural background rate. So we actually are currently in kind of a mass extinction event right now. So in 2009, we had 1,321 species in the US that were classified as endangered or threatened. So what do those words mean? Endangered means at risk, at serious risk of going extinct. So a good example here is our giant panda and our white rhino, actually, who just went extinct. And then threatened is likely to become endangered soon through all or part of its range. So that's through, say, a specific location or through the entire species as a whole. So that's what threatened and endangered means. Usually animals can come back from being a threatened species. They can build their populations again, but once you're at endangered, it's pretty difficult to come back to a healthy population size. And then we have this thing called the Living Planet Index. And this is going to summarize all the global population trends for certain terrestrial, freshwater, and marine species. So I want you to remember that not all the life that we're talking about for extinction is on land. It's not just terrestrial. There's also freshwater and marine species who are endangered and threatened, like a lot of the different types of whales and sea turtles are highly endangered or threatened. So what are some causes of this biodiversity loss? So habitat change and loss is one, invasive species, pollution, and overharvesting. So some of these are due to human impacts, some of them can be more natural, but again, let's see what these mean here. So habitat loss or change, this is the greatest cause of biodiversity lost. Make sure we underline this, star it. This is the most important here. So habitat loss or change or loss is the greatest cause of biodiversity loss. Organisms that are adapted to their habitat decline in their population when we see this changing, and that's going to be due to habitat fragmentation. So patches of suitable habitat are going to be surrounded by unsuitable habitat, and we can see that happening here with our pictures. We have this really nice forest, and slowly we're going to see these patches of unsuitable land start appearing until finally we get all the way down here and we can see that all of our patches of suitable land are completely separated from each other, which is definitely going to decrease that biodiversity in the area, because in general those larger habitat fragments can support greater biodiversity than the smaller fragments. So we can support a lot of biodiversity here, where this tiny little fragment here is not going to be able to support as many species, which is going to decrease the population, decrease the biodiversity here. So a lot of times this habitat fragmentation can happen through human impacts, maybe deforestation, building houses, towns, anything like that. But it could also possibly happen naturally to disease and other types of things here. So let's talk about the other three: invasive species, pollution, and overharvesting. So invasive species, those are species that come into an area where they are not usually found, and they can outcompete and displace the native species. So invasive species, when they come into an area that they're not usually supposed to be in, they have no predators. So they're able to eat all the food that they want and outcompete all the other animals, because not only do our native species have predators, but they also won't have enough food because those invasive species are taking it. So it's again a cause for biodiversity loss. That harmful chemicals and materials from pollution might also make their way into habitats, which can poison people and wildlife. So pollution, once it comes into an area, it's very likely to decrease the biodiversity of both plants and animals, because depending on the chemicals and materials, there won't be enough of what we need for those species to survive. So especially with plants, if they aren't getting the right nutrients they need, those plants are going to start to die off. Now we have lost our producers, and our consumers are going to start to follow that. And then last one, overharvesting. So occasionally species can be driven towards extinction by hunting or overharvesting by humans. So again, this is going to see a big impact with some examples here of the Siberian tigers and passenger pigeons. So again, overhunting, we've seen that quite a bit, especially with rhinos and poaching. Overharvesting of plants as well can take out the nutrients of the soil in an area, which is really difficult to bring plants back into that area. And then lastly here, another cause for biodiversity loss is going to be climate change. So this is increasingly becoming a factor, and because of that, climate change has the potential to have a global effect on biodiversity instead of just an ecosystem or a biome effect. So because climate change is going to be raising the temperature of the planet as a whole, we can see here ice caps were not going to be able to sustain those colder-lived animals. So definitely going to affect in colder places, but if we think about the already warm places, raising the temperatures there can cause a lot of issues as well. So since this is a globally happening thing, it has the potential to take out biodiversity on the entire planet. So if we have any questions here, please let me know, and I'll see you next time.